There's trouble. Bit of Jim Does Supercoach for you. Heading into AFL round 14. How are we all feeling? We're past the midway point of the season. We're firmly in the grips of the buys, which is still pretty fine with your top 18 scorers. But AFL Supercoach, how are we all doing? How'd we go in round 13? I pulled off an okay-ish kind of one, 1944. What a year it was. Actually, I guess we just did have the anniversary of the D-Day landings. That was in 1944. History with Jim. But 1944 landed me in the top 5% of this week, so saw my overall rank climb 4,500 spots up to 18,744, which is good. Basically, all I was after for a couple of these rounds is to get some of those green arrows, because the last couple of weeks have been a bit of a disaster, and to be honest, this week wasn't that great either. But I was, especially with the captaincy, looked at looping Bont. He got the 106. I rolled the dice with Grundy, thinking just maybe up against, at home especially, against the Saints who, look, TDK and Rowan Marshall, it's been a bit how you going. Figured Grundy might be all right. He was looking okay early and then sort of tailed off, finishes with a 90. So, yeah, that was a bit disappointing, obviously, in the end. Obviously would have been better off going with someone like Luke Jackson, who ripped off a 128, which is pretty good. Otherwise, I guess the big sort of thing this week is we've got a few more injuries to deal with, but overall, I think we're sort of going into this week. One of the real big questions, simple questions this week is, do you need to trade? How many trades have you got left? How many are you going to be left with after this week? How many do you feel comfortable having left? And I guess, look, with 4 teams on a bye this week, it sort of throws into stark relief just who we can even try to trade in. If you've got enough cover, if you've got 18 players, if you've got 18 plus, obviously, I feel like you might be okay. Maybe if you don't have an LDU or a Cherry, maybe going to those guys, possibly. We'll talk about trading targets in a minute. But with the 4 teams, well, the 6 teams rather now, who have had their mid-season buys, the Crows, love a bit of the Crom, the Suns, the Roos, after a 20-goal belting, the Power, the Tigers, and GWS. If you are going to be trading in players, you want them to be from those teams because they've already had their buys. It does throw up a couple of very interesting names, which we'll get to in a second. But, I mean, if we should be getting to the very, very pointy end of upgrade-downgrade season, you should be pretty close to having a full premo team at this point. I think I'm maybe 1 away. But I think with the few injuries out there to deal with, like we had Hugh McCluggage miss last week. If you've got him, you've got a decision to make if you're going to keep rolling with him and hope that he turns around his form. He's been in struggle town. The other ones are Tom Stewart, missing this week already with concussion. That's a tough one. Especially, I mean, with the Cats, they're not going to, rush him back. They feel pretty okay at the moment, but that's a tough one if you've got Tom Stewart. Max Gawn, we're going to keep an eye on him with his shoulder. Interesting sort of turnaround this week up against the Dons. Jack Ross, still listed dealing with his concussion as well, if you've got him in your forward line on the Tigers. So it'd be interesting to see how he fares this week and if he gets named, how he's all looking. J-Mac, Justin McInerney, 8 to 10 weeks with a hammy. That was absolutely brutal. I've loved the idea of getting J-Mac into my team. I just never got the chance to actually bring him in. I think the big decision I had was Rankin versus J-Mac a little while ago. And then, of course, I bring Rankin in and he gets hurt almost immediately. But Mac is out for a little bit. Archie, Kitty Coleman, still a few injuries out there. So if you've got to replace those, there's plenty of sort of sideways opportunities, I think, out there at the moment. And I guess before we dive into the trade outs, what are the big issues we're sort of staring at this week? I think we've all got a few underperforming premos floating around, right? The Dan Houstons of the world, Hugh McCluggage, Sam Walsh. I've got Caleb Sarong. This was the thing. I'm rolling with Rankin, Sarong, and Naz. I sort of, held them through their injuries. Naz came back this week, felt pretty good. But yeah, the underperforming primos. Very simply, I don't care. right? They're in my team. I'm not going to waste a trade sort of going sideways until I need to, unless the rest of the team's already done. That's when you start sideways trading or upgrading that premo to a super duper premo if you've got an underperformer. So I'm okay about that. The other sort of big ones are we'll talk about the trade in, trade outs in a moment. Some of the ruck queries we've got. Tristan Xerri, what was that? What the hell was that?
What was that? What the hell was that?
43 points out there in the West in Bunbury up against Luke Jackson. Gets towed up by Jackson and Cox. He's got a couple of awesome matchups coming up, and that's going to be one of the big sort of decisions we'll have to make this week. If you don't have Xerri, if you try to bring him in, it's a big one. It's a pretty big one, I'll tell you, because he's got, West Coast, Richmond, Essendon all coming up. Port, it's an absolute dream ruck run. But the way they're using him, what was he, under 50% of CBAs this week? Not great. It's a bit of a worrisome one. But other than that, I think if you look at the way that we've sort of seen some of the players in and out this week, we're running out of trade-in cash cow targets. A couple of these, you don't mind Hugo being there. That's pretty good. But otherwise, there's scant avenues for making money. So we have to tread a little bit carefully is kind of how I'm looking at this for the next few weeks. So what happened this week? Logan Morris ripped off the highest score of the week with 1-3. My good mate, Johnny the Weapon Noble, 152. There is a path not taken with me and Johnny Noble, and it just breaks my heart every time I think about it. I think it was the week, I think I'm going Holmes ahead of Johnny Noble because it was either Archie Roberts or Holmes, and Johnny Noble is absolutely crushing. He's got a 5-round average of 131.6. He is so good. Neil Erasmus with 140 last week. He had 138 for Lockie Neal. He has stayed in my team the entire time. You're sort of just hoping that Lockie Neal goes on this massive second half run that he is sort of want to do. Same with Caleb Sarong, actually. Zach Reed up against my Blues last week, 138. Jai Newcomb, 136. He was really good in that game. Tom McCarthy looked great, 132 for the Eagles up against North. Andy Brayshaw, 129. Luke Jackson, 128. Max Hall, he's going to pop up again later, 128 as well. Voss, the Prancing Pony, 128. Sam Durham, 127. SDK, 124. Jarman Impey, 123. And Bailey Dale, 122. Will Day also ripped off for 122. If you want a super duper pod, he's in 0.5% of teams at the moment. Hawthorn are on their bye this week, but there's one to keep in the back of your old bonds. Just saying. Right. But anyway, so who are the trade-in, trade-out targets this week? Jim, what are we all looking at and what do you think? Well, most traded-out players so far is Angus Angry Anderson for your Collingwood Pies. They are on the bye this week. And I guess that's the sort of thing. You've got Carlton, Hawthorn, Collingwood and Freo on the bye this week. So it's a bit of a tough one. You think round 16 is a bit of a tough bye week as well, but this one's pretty tough on top of it. You got Philippou, the second most traded out after a real tough one. He's now got a break even of 116 after his shocking 19 points against Sydney. He'd been sort of decently consistent as well, 80, 58, 82, 88, 71, but now he's going backwards in price at 340k. Yeah, time to jump off. Jagger Smith, don't mind the way that Josh Fraser's now using him. If you've still got him, it's yes, he's on the bye. If he's gotten you to the bye, he's at 405k. He has done his job. Well, 406k rather. I still think, though, if you want to roll with him at your forward 6, that's fine. J-Mac, obviously, with the injury, he's out. At 390k, it's a bit of a tough one that he's taken a bit of a tumble price-wise. Dan Houston, not injured, just bad. 395, Houston is. That sucks. He's my D6 at the moment. He's just going to stay there until basically we're all upgraded everywhere else, and then we look at maybe moving him on for somebody else as a defender. Because I think if I had been all upgraded already, I would have probably gone from him to Ash this week, or Whitfield, and here we are. Milan Murdoch is the 6th most traded out at the moment. He had not a great score this week, but because he's got, he's already, 359k. He had the 102 last week, the 54 this week. It means his break-even is at 61, and he's playing North. They're at home because North sold that whole home game. I'm fine with keeping Milan Murdoch. But again, if you need to sacrifice your sort of rookies to make a bit of cash to go do your upgrades, that's fine. I can't, at this point of the season, he's actually a fine F6 for the moment as well. That's what I'm rolling with. I'm rolling with Milan Murdoch at F6. But yeah, the rookies have done their job. If you need to upgrade them, cull them to upgrade, you can't be sentimental. Simple as that. It's Supercoach. Josh Lindsay at 7, same sort of vibe down back. Leo Lombard, still in teams. Solid, I guess. He ended up at a 307K. 307K. Patrick Recheko, if you held him through the bye, I'm not entirely convinced why you'd be trading him out now. I traded him last week because I needed to. The break-even's only 27, so he'll still make you a bit of cash, presumably. But yeah, bit of a weird one. They play in Hobart this week, so I don't know about the Tigers. And Hugh McCluggage is the 10th most traded out, which sort of makes sense. Under an injury cloud as well with his hamstring. Came out of the team last week very late. Yeah, I never jumped on the McCluggage train. I just didn't quite trust it. The scores weren't there, and here we are. So the most traded in players, though, you've got our man Hugo Hall Kahan. He's been fantastic. He would have 72 in his first game. That was pretty cool, I thought. Did you, Jim? Yes, I did. That was neat. Campbell Lake on the Saints. He's the second most traded in after ripping off, 45 against the Swans last week. See, at least Hugo, it seems that he's got a little bit of job security. It feels like he is in line to keep playing this week. Not one of the outs for the minute. We'll find that out pretty soon, though, for the Thursday night games. Whereas Campbell Lake, like the Saints, it's a little bit of a sort of in and out kind of vibe there. But I don't know, at 99K, it's fine to bring him in, right? Finn Callahan is obviously one of the tip-top primos that people are bringing in. He's at 494K. He's the third most Australian player so far, ahead of Sam Durham, who's at 365. Now, Durham, he was a big one that I've been talking about the last year or two. Love me some Sam Durham as a player. He does have these huge spike games where you're like, 120, yes, 113, let's go. And then it'll sort of drop precipitously, won't it? And so you just got to be a little bit careful. But with the break-in of 78, he will probably get over that. He's probably not going to drop too much more, but he just had 127 against the Blues. He had 102, 106 4-5 weeks ago. The rest of his scores are sort of, 70s, 60s, apart from the 101 he scored against Hawthorn. I love Sam Durham. I just don't know if I can go there. Lockie Ash is the 5th most traded in. That makes sense. He is a weapon down back. I feel like he's going to be I'm going to upgrade Houston to Ash at some point, I dare say. I do like Ash, especially at that value, even maybe ahead of Whitfield. Whitfield probably outscores him. Bailey Dale, I don't know, as another defender, probably outscores him as well. But Ash is very, very, very solid and has been for a little while now, right? He's got a break even at 94. He's ripped off 119, 95, 99, 111, 97, 92, right? He is super duper solid. His lowest score was at 69. Nice. At the start of the season. Literally round 0. JHF, Jason Horn-France is the 6th most traded in. That makes sense. He was really good this week. I've got him in my team now. Feel okay about that. Took Miller. 470K. Love Took. He's got an interesting game against the Cats this week down there at Taxpayer Park in Geelong. And break even 92 probably gets there. I don't know if he'll go too massive against the Cats, but he's been very, very, very good. I think he's only got the lowest score he's had all year is a 72. So yeah, not too bad there for him, man. Took, I don't know, that team just feels a bit off though, doesn't it? We talked about it on Footy Unfiltered this week, and it's just, I don't know, it's hard to put your finger on it. Jordan Dawson has been going absolutely gangbusters the last few weeks. Had a huge game this week against the Cats. Break even to 125 is at 579K. 138, 115, 130, 111, 114. Not bad. Good size. Proven scorer. He's always going to be getting there or thereabouts. Lowest score of the season is 80. Of all the games he's played, he hasn't turned up twice. That's it. So I don't mind bringing in Jordan Dawson as a pretty decent POD. Bit of a pod. Isn't he, Jim? Yes, he is a bit of a pod. He is currently owned by 8% of teams. It's not bad. Not bad. Then Harry Kyle, one of the sort of very few cash cows out there at the moment, 145K on the bubble, I think, this week as well. After the break even of -30, played against the Saints last week, 65 and 53 in his score cycle, so that's all right, but he's just a bit pricey. And then Mitch Pods on the Collingwood Magpies. He's the 10th most traded in. Don't mind him, because I just feel like they need big-bodied, mature players there in Collingwood, especially up forward. I think he keeps getting a game to the point where I'm going to talk out my trades in a little bit. He might be coming into my team this week, despite being on a bye. That's all pending, of course, the actual teams. So, are there any other cash cows out there? Really, Jim? Not really this week, apart from, obviously, our man Hugo, but he's only played the one game, which is pretty funny. Jasper Alga, he is still only priced at 148.9k. Break even to -34 for the Tigers. If he gets named, he's not going to be too bad. Lockie Smith, Harry Kyle, Hugo Hawker-Hahn, Charlie Edwards. Yeah, there's Charlie Banfield didn't get named this week. Bit of a rough one. Outside of that, there's not too many actually out there going, is there? So, bit of a rough one. I think the ones that are worth keeping an eye on are the 99k mid-season draft guys. That's the one I'm sort of more interested in, right? I think in terms of just the overall, if we're going to be bringing dudes in, we can sort of start getting a little bit speculative. Yes. Which means, I think if you look at, obviously, we talked about Hugo, but then there is also Jackson Artemis, and there's a couple of other folks out there that you're sort of looking at, and if they get named this week, Marcus Herbert as well is a pretty interesting one for the Eagles. Just a couple of names like that you just need to keep an eye on for teams this week. And if they do get named at 99k, I'd be dumping them in as a upgrade target. Well, upgrade, downgrade from one of your matured cash-making rookies to one of the 99kers. That's where I'm sort of sitting at the moment. So I think the targets this week, we want to be trading in people from the Crows, the Suns, the Roos, the Power, the Tigers, the GWS. Ashton Whitfield, I feel completely fine about for the Giants down back. Johnny Noble, if you can get to him, I also don't mind that. I'd probably be going from, Houston to either Ash, Whitfield, or Noble. Noble probably is the POD, was probably where I would go, but I just don't think I'll be able to afford it in the end. But LDU and Raul are pretty interesting ones in the midfield as well. I believe in LDU a little bit. Big back half of the season for the Roos. They need to step up. Up forward, you've got Took. Obviously, I mentioned him earlier. Zach Bailey is an interesting one. But still, it doesn't have it still has his bye to come. Riley Sanders, another one, still with the round 16 bye. So I'm just going to hold off for a second, 99 this week. There's two other ones who have still got their buys to come up forward that I am absolutely fascinated by, that I'll be trying to get my, this would probably be one of my F6s. Chad Chunley-Warner. Can we do it? Can we do it? I've got the Heen machine, Heen man, already in the team. Can we get Chad Chunley-Warner or Max Hall? That's probably one of the interesting ones, I reckon, for my F6, but with their actual, buys still to come, just going to hold off for a little bit. But, yeah, that's probably the two I'm targeting at the moment. And then the big one for me this week, Xerri. Tristan Xerri. 43 points this week. It was an absolute out-and-out disaster. But if I go into this week the way my team is set up, I think I'd be at about 18 actual players, depending on if Banfield and Lewis play, and if I chop and change my lineups a little bit with some of the DPP action. I could also move on from Angus Angry Anderson, Will Lewis, and probably Dirksen, maybe Zach Kotalski, not entirely sure which one yet. Do some switching around, because Hugo can swing back if need be. That's the cool thing about your DPP with your mid defender, which means I could bring in Xerri and pop him in my flex to have Grundy and Luke Jackson, the three, non-Max Gawn primo rucks. The big question is whether or not you actually trust Xerri to get back into massive, massive, massive high-scoring form after 3 weeks where he has certainly not done that, right? He has been a Barry Crocker shocker the last 3 weeks. His 3-week average is 81.3. It's not great, but that's why he's at 570k. The massive break even this week against the Eagles after he's 43. This all makes sense. A break even of 188. But he does play West Coast, Richmond, Essendon, and Port Adelaide. Then Collingwood at Marvel. Don't mind that for the next 5 weeks. He scored 199 against the West Coast Eagles earlier this year. He had 128 against Port Adelaide earlier this year. He did have 68 against the Bomb Rays, but still. It's just more of a question of like the 87, 114, 43. He's had 2 clunkers the last 3 weeks. Other than that, he had a 68 against the Bombers. Does he bounce back? Is it worth going, all right, I'm going to use 3 trades this week, go down to 299 Ks. Whether, you know, if you look at the actual rookies out there at the moment, the 99 Ks, it's like Campbell Lake. Obviously, we're talking about him for the Saints as one of the very few cash cows out there. He's only played the 1 game as well. But then you look at someone like Jackson Artemis for the Bombers, who will probably, hopefully, get a run at some point. Or, you know, Herbert, etc. So 2 double downgrade, 1 upgrade. That would leave me with quite simply only F6 upgrade from Milan Murdoch in the next few weeks, hopefully making a little bit of cash. It would only leave me with 8 trades as well. So that's essentially where I'm sitting at this week. That's the decision I'm going to make. I'm leaning towards making that decision depending on if we get any of those 99Kers named in teams tomorrow. So because I think Cherry up against the Eagles, you do have Bailey J. Williams. It's a little bit different than Matt Flynn, I think. You can wait, I think, on Cherry for a week as well, just to keep an eye on him before he takes on the Tigers of the G next week. At the same time, if you're trying to keep your overall ranking sort of going upwards and you just want to get your team upgraded, you have to do it at some point, right? So it just depends on whether or not you can save a little bit of cash. If he doesn't come close to his break even this week and tops out at 110 and drops another 25K, suddenly you're looking at like a 540K Tristan Xerri that you can jump on next week, and maybe a couple of your other dudes have actually scored a little bit. It's all just all dependent on your team, obviously, but this is where I'm at. So that's the only sort of real big decision I'm going to look at this week. I think one of the other ones is maybe bringing in Durham, but I remain unconvinced. Or maybe Took Miller if I just moved on. I think the idea would be that would be my F6 for the minute. I'd be able to move Milan Murdoch into the midfield, throw Took in at F6 and sort of just go, ooh, right, well, that's me using Angry Anderson and Will Lewis money to get to him. And then keeping the powder dry for Tristan Xerri the week after if we can, upgrade from Milan Murdoch. If Murdoch goes for another big one against North, it's not going to be a giant jump up there to, pull off that final upgrade. So that's where I'm sitting at the moment. Still undecided, but I think it might be worth just saving the trades for a week, but I still remain undecided. We might bring in Cherry, we might not. We'll see how we go as of tomorrow, but that's where I'm sitting. So, in terms of captaincy this week, I'll probably throw the VC on Bont against the Crom at home in Marvel. The Bont could go absolutely ham. And then if you do have Cherry, I'd obviously throw the C on him against the Eagles on a Saturday afternoon. Probably. Then you've got, obviously, later on that day, you've got Grundy up against Port. Probably not a bad shout either. A couple of the other ones, Lockie Neal against the Tigers down in Hobart would be pretty interesting. Don't mind that. Max Holmes down at GMHBA against the Suns, but that's on Friday night. So I feel like Bont with the VC into, if I have Cherry, probably the C on him. Otherwise, maybe the C on Grundy or Neal at the moment. And that's where I think it is. And that's it. That's the round 14 team. So, look, what would you do? Let me know in the comments. Shout out any DMs. I reckon the Cherry trade is probably on, just because if he goes massive, I'm going to feel like an idiot for missing out, and I want that score on my team right now. And I guess the only player I'd be trading out this week that would be playing would be Will Lewis. So I feel like the score that he scores versus what Will Lewis has might be worth it, but we'll keep an eye on teams for tomorrow for a bunch of those 99Kers. So let us know what you're going to do, how you're all vibing, and what's going to happen for you this week. Love to hear out any other questions as well. Send them through. Anyway, that's it. That's the round 14 team reveal for Jim Does Supercoach. Here's to a big, big round 14. Happy Supercoaching.
So surprised, I'm still a contender.